Hey there, it's Mart with another Max-Q update on the J-3 Cub Restoration. We're doing the date a little different this time, but there you go. I know I missed last week with, of course, I was up at Oshkosh, and I had plans. I was going to try to put together a video while I was up there, but too much to do, too hot, and hey, I'm getting old, so can't do as much as I used to. But anyway, Oshkosh was fantastic, and I've got some stuff a little later in the video that I'm going to show of things that I thought were really cool. A lot of it's Cub related, some of it's not. But I do have a really amazing story I wanted to share that took place up there at Oshkosh. So I think it was on Thursday. Randomly, this gal sees me eating a root beer float on my knees next to a dumpster. Yeah, that's the life I live right there. And she thinks, hey, she just got there today, so she was only going to have a couple days at Oshkosh, but she's a lifetime member, and that comes with a perk up there at Oshkosh. They have a building where they have refreshments and such for lifetime members and one guest. Well, she didn't have any guest with her, and so she sees this poor, pitiful old man sitting on his knees next to the dumpster eating his diet root beer float. And she comes back to me and says, would I like to have the pass to be able to go in there and have refreshments and such? And I'm like, sure, that'd be great. And of course, I've never seen her before. She's never seen me. So we're walking on over there, talking. We get inside, I get the wristband, and we get a drink. I had a Diet Mountain Dew. Very refreshing. We sit down at a table to talk for a few minutes, and so we're just talking about stuff. I'm learning about her. She's working on her private pilot license. She's very passionate about aviation. She's from Canada. She's driven like 12 hours just to be able to spend a couple days at Oshkosh. So this is fascinating. And of course, I do, a variety of things that are sort of interesting, so I've got stuff to talk about. So we're talking, for 20 minutes or so, and then all of a sudden, the guy sitting over at the table right next to us, he gets up and he comes over and interrupts very politely with his British accent, and he's like, I really apologize for interrupting, but he's like, I'm sitting over here and I'm trying to catch up. Now, he's got a Cub shirt on, first off. And as it turns out, he owns a Cub, and he's trying to catch up on a video series that he's a little behind on. He's watching video number 14 of what? Of this project. And he's sitting literally like 5 feet away from me and this gal. I talk, because I talk a lot. He hears me talking, and he's like, that's the guy. So how crazy is that I randomly wind up in this space at this table, whereas 45 minutes before that, there was essentially zero chance that I could be in that building sitting at any table, but especially that one, with this guy, Jonathan, from the UK, who owns a Cub and has been watching these videos because he finds it interesting. So that was, I tell you, it was an amazing time, and we spent about 30 minutes, all of us there, talking together. It was incredible. Really enjoyed it. Very cool guy. And I'm just really thankful that all happened. As unusual and random as it was an amazing experience. So I met some fantastic people at Oshkosh this year. You always do. It was hot, but it was great, and lots of airplanes, lots of great times. So anyway, if you haven't been to Oshkosh, you better start making plans right now for next year. I'll be there all year. Hopefully I'll be flying something up there, even though I didn't this year. That was originally the plan, but anyway. So now we're going to talk about some Cub stuff. Let me pick up the camera here, and we're going to go on into the fuselage here in the spray booth. Actually, I was going to talk a little bit on Friday before I left last week, right before Oshkosh. I worked a little bit more on the jack screw here, and I think I had mentioned, and I think you can see it fairly well, that these bolts, which came out of the wings, and I cleaned them up, they're the Piper Cub bolts. They're exactly the length and size that need to be mounted here in the jack screw yoke. And so it's going to be really cool because, as you know, there's an access panel here, and with a big slot in it for the stab to run up and down, and that bolt will be very visible. And so that'll be really cool. I'll also mention that I test fit the stabilizers, both of them, into the carry through here and back here at the back. Both of the tubes that go inside of these tubes and then the stab slides onto, both of those are going to have to be replaced on this airplane. But I had the old ones at least usable for the test fit, and that went just fine. So I think we're in good shape there. I do still have a little bit to go on the stringers. I didn't quite get that finished. So, and even though it's Monday here, I thought maybe I'd get to it, but I'm still tired from Oshkosh. And I really wanted to get this video put together. But I was also going to show over here that I've cleaned up the pulley, and I made a new, they make the pin actually is a piece of copper-coated welding rod. So I've made the new pin that engages the pulley onto the crank shaft essentially here for the trim. And I also have an all-new trim cable coming that I took the old one, which was stretched and too long, and all the way back there at the jack screw I came up with a measurement for how much too long it was, and I sent it off to have a custom cable made. If you have any question about where to get that done, I've just added my email address to the About page here on my YouTube channel. Send me an email, I can give you that info. And so anyway, I also bought a new Restoration manufactured crank handle here. So, and I have a plan for that. It's chromed, and I'm going to try the walnut shells in the blasting cabinet to see if I can put a satin finish on that chrome without taking any of that chrome off. I just think that'll look a lot nicer without the glossy reflections. So we'll see how that goes. So the trim cable is going to go in here real soon. It'll be back to me here in a couple of days, so I can get that in place. I'd like to get a few more of these things in place before I even start putting the fabric in the cockpit. Some of these things can definitely be done after that's in, but it's just a little easier to have full access. So that's kind of the plan there. And then, as you probably know, there's a little clamping mechanism that goes on this tube, and it runs a piece of, normally what Piper used was piano wire that goes up to this pulley here, and then it works its way forward, and it goes all the way up here to this spring actually, and it's part of the indicator that is used in here with the crank and all that for indicating where the stab is in its trim movement. So anyway, I have, instead of music wire, I'll show you what I have out here. This is what I did out on the Super Cub back in 2017 and 18. And this was at the suggestion of Clyde Smith when I went to his seminar. But instead of using the music wire, I'm using, this is a leader line for fishing, but it's 90-pound test. This stuff is crazy strong. It's a braided cable, but it's also vinyl coated, and it's super strong and works really well for this. And then I have the actual appropriate, they're very much like an IcoPress sleeve actually, to be able to crimp the ends on that. So this is the old piano wire that was used, and it's I think this braided wire is actually a much better way to go. And the other thing, I'll be using this tubing here that I got for another thing that Clyde suggests. If you're familiar, the trim indicator wire, as it's routed from the fair leads, winds up coming in at a really funky angle as it relates to the cover plate that goes on the inside here. So Clyde uses a piece of that vinyl tubing to have the initial travel of the indicator wire, it's up here actually, run straight before it winds up going up and getting into the fair leads. So that way the little indicator that slides here is not being pulled up at an angle and wearing the cover plate out. I have a cover plate out here that I can show. So there's the cover plate, and that, of course, the crank sits here in the hole so you can crank, but the little indicator, which actually is this guy here, and I've put some green on him for now. I don't know, we may change the color on that. But this way, it will wind up being pulled straight through the slot here in the cover so that it doesn't keep wearing out the aluminum when it's being pulled at an angle. So anyway, these are all some steps that will make the entire trim system work really, really well. Having a new endless trim cable and the right length and properly adjusted. There's a idler pulley that goes back there at the jack screw. And then to have the crank with a new handle and a new pin and a new trim indicator wire. It's just it should all be really good. This should be no maintenance and quite operational for a long time on this particular J3. So that is almost ready to rock. Won't take me very long, I think, to get all that in place. So okay, so otherwise, you know, the wings here haven't changed, and of course I was gone for a week, so but the fabric will start soon. I kind of keep saying that, but there's no shortage of things to do, so I will get to the fabric here pretty soon. But I thought I'd share a few more things about Oshkosh. So here's a picture of my camping unit, which is actually just my little Maverick pickup truck. This year especially, the only thing I used was the truck. So everything else that I had for camping stayed inside the truck. No tent, no cooler, nothing like that. It was super, super streamlined, and it actually works really, really well. I was very happy. That was my campsite. At least for part of the time, I was also right across the street with an EAA chapter for a little bit of time. But anyway, okay, rambling on here. I want to share some pictures of Van's RV15, because there's been a lot of excitement since it was up at Oshkosh a few years ago in the bare aluminum and looking like it was something they were going to make available soon. And of course, they've had all their little challenges with finances and such. But hey, they've proven that they've really been working on that airplane. They've redesigned the wing. And at this little gathering, it was an info gathering session. And they shared an awful lot of info. There was a lot of people in the grandstands there listening, and they're making wing kits available apparently right now for an introductory price right around $20,000. That's just for the wing kit, and the rest of the kits are going to incrementally be made available, but it won't be until I think the end of 2026 before the last of the kits will actually the components that you need to build the airplane will be available. And and I don't know what the full cost will be for everything. And of course, you put a big engine in it and you're gonna have a lot of expense. It's not gonna be a cheap airplane, but it should be one fantastic performing airplane. 2 seats with lots of baggage, very remarkably fast. I believe they're shooting for 140 knot cruise on an airplane that will perform extremely well in the STOL environment as well. So anyway, it was pretty exciting seeing the RV15 up there. I've got some more pictures here I wanted to share of both Oshkosh, and then actually the weekend before I went to Oshkosh, like I've done several years in the past, I stopped at Broadhead, and I had hoped to fly the Baby Ace to Broadhead first and then up to Oshkosh, but of course I did not fly. I drove instead. So I drove to Rockford and hung out with my friend Elroy there, and he actually let me fly his 1938 Aeronca Chief from Rockford, the Cottonwood Airport right on the north side of town, up to Broadhead, which is not terribly far away, 25 minutes or so away, via 1938 65 horsepower Chief. So we were up there for Saturday. He flew the Hat's biplane that he has access to, and so we went up there, spent the day at Broadhead for the Pete and Pole and Hat's fly-in. And there was some weather issues around some of it, but Saturday was a good day, and it was really cool getting to fly such a vintage airplane. That Chief is a really, really interesting airplane, and really enjoyed that. And while I was there then, I was able to also get some pictures. There was a real nice Cub there, and this started my process of trying to get some pictures of some of the details that will relate to the project here. So here's a few pictures that show a little bit of detail on this particular airplane. But I also got a little video here of the airplane when I assume it was the owner. I never did even talk to him, but he was taking rides there that afternoon and propping the airplane. He's got a guy in the back seat there and holding the brakes and running the mags, and propping the airplane from behind just like I do, and it's a very nostalgic look and of course a nostalgic sound. So anyway, that was Saturday. Sunday the things was wound down a bunch there at Broadhead, and so I actually just hung out with my friend Elroy, and then Monday made the rest of the trip by Maverick pickup truck up to Oshkosh. And one of the things that I specifically wanted to do this year, which I did pretty well, is get pictures of a variety of Cubs and some of the details to further be able to clarify some things that, I didn't take this airplane apart. And while I have a fair amount of time in Cubs, I've not had one apart. I did the Super Cub, but there's a significant amount of difference in the details between a J3 and the Super Cub. And obviously I want this to come out as good as it possibly can. So understanding those detailed differences and having a plan, especially as it relates to fabric and such, before you just dive into it is very, very helpful. So some of these pictures definitely help. But this Cub was really cute because it has these are old original fenders. If you look at them closer, you can see they're beat up pretty bad. But they were just recently at least repainted, actually cleaned up. They've got some issues still, but they're all there and repainted and then mounted. And I actually really like the look. It's kind of funny because back in the day, I would not have enjoyed the look of these probably. But in a way, I think I like these little fenders better than I do the full wheel pants on a J3. But it's all just really cool to see because it's a pretty rare thing anymore. And then moving on, one of the other things that I really wanted to get some comparisons on, and this picture shows it, there's 3 different Cubs here showing the boot cowl, and especially the area of greatest interest to me is the aft end of the boot cowl there at an angle, and whether or not it has a bead or a finish on it. And all 3 of these here have a different treatment on that edge, and so I still haven't decided exactly what I'm going to do. Though I am planning to use 25 thousandths in its 2024 T3, which obviously is not real easy to form in the micro sense. So I may not be doing a bead on that trailing aft end of the boot cowl, but we'll see. I want to do a little test piece. I don't even have a beater, but I think I have access to a couple options that way. So maybe we'll do a test and see. But as you can see there on the blue and white one, it does not have a bead at the back edge, and it looks just fine. So it's not a necessity. It was just something that Piper did with the soft aluminum that they used. So, and then I took pictures. These aren't all the pictures I took, but here's a couple samples of looking at the bottom up at the very bottom of a boot cowl on 2 different Cubs. And and it's remarkable, of course, because these airplanes are old, and they were certified in a much looser environment than airplanes are today. There is some latitude, obviously, for things to have been altered over the years. So you see a tremendous amount of difference from one Cub to another. And the same thing happens as you look here with like the skylight and the wing root fairings. I've got several different images here and lots of differences. So some key things just to look at to help me to decide how the final look of the wing root fairings and the skylight will be on this particular Cub. And then another area of great interest to me is the way the plumbing is underneath the 12-gallon tank there behind the instrument panel. And again, because I didn't take this airplane apart, and I want to see what good options are as well. So this worked out well to be able to get some pictures. I was kind of surprised, though, that I only saw 6 or 7 Cubs on the grounds for the whole week, which I was quite surprised at. Obviously, back in 2012, when the 75th anniversary went on and there was the mass arrival, it was an entire sea of Cubs, and there's a bazillion Cubs out there in the world yet. But obviously, arriving at Oshkosh in a slow airplane like that is not the most enjoyable experience. So it's harder to find people willing to make the trip. And it seems like, really, I didn't see a whole lot of T-craft up there as well, even though they're significantly faster and such. So So hopefully, I don't know, it would be nice to see a better representation of the J-3 up at Oshkosh, and I'm hopeful. I'm actually going to try to communicate to the EAA, and I would encourage others to do so if you have a clear understanding of what you think should change when it comes to the flying arrivals for vintage aircraft that are specifically slow. There is the no radio procedure, but it's not terribly well published, and because it's not super highly structured, it's not really capable of handling a very heavy workload. And the slower airplanes, even like my Baby Ace, my cruise speeds, even my high-speed cruise is really maybe only 80 miles an hour. And the slow speed for arrival via Fisk, to my understanding, is requested at 90 knots. And so at 75 to 80 miles an hour, you're definitely the slow guy in the way. And when things get really, really dense with that arrival, being the slow guy in the way is not a very comforting thought or feeling. So I'm really hopeful that the EAA will work on a completely alternative arrival procedure for being able to get larger quantities of the old vintage aircraft, whether they're radio or no radio, the bigger issue being their slow cruise speed, a method of arrival that feels comfortable and safe without being in the way. And and I talked to somebody else up there this year who is also making this plea to the EAA. So I'm hopeful, because there's no reason we couldn't see, a couple hundred more vintage classic aircraft on the really slow side showing up there if there was this way to get in. So anyway, so I'm hopeful for that. Anyway, and then to close it out here for today, I've got this little video I shot of one of the two Zeppelin NT airships that Goodyear had up there, and I just love airships as well, so I thought I'd close this video out with this little bit of footage. So anyway, thanks for watching, and then hopefully here in the coming weeks we're going to see some really significant changes to everything as I do get going on the fabric with the Stewart system, and we just try to get this J3 Cub finished here as quickly as we can. So anyway, thanks for watching, and we'll see you next week.